You must be the one they sent. Good. I was starting to think they weren't going to bother. Name's Earl, 23 years behind this counter, which I know sounds like a long time, and it is, but that's not really the point right now. Sit down if you want. We're going to be a while. So the surface stuff, the register, the cooler, what sells and what doesn't, you'll have that figured out inside a week, and I'm not going to insult you by walking through it. The one thing I'll say is the clearance bin by the front door. Keep it stocked. I'll tell you why in a minute. Day permits are different though. Those aren't surface. $30 each. I keep a notebook for it. Get their name and what trail they're taking. Mark the return when they're back. Ranger station up the road closed a few years back, and the county handed it all to me, which, they weren't exactly fighting to keep that station open. Cheaper to let the guy with the shop do it. But I took it, partly for the business and partly because it means I have their names before they go up. You'll understand that later. End of every day at closing, I go through the notebook. Names out, names back. Who went up, who came home. Most nights, everyone's accounted for. Most nights. I check the trail cam about every 10 minutes, just so you know. Habit. Don't even think about it anymore. Anyway, the trail. 4 miles to the summit ridge, and it's the real thing. Old growth cedar and fir from about the 1 mile mark up. Some of those trees have been there longer than anyone around here can remember. And when the canopy closes over you, it gets quiet in a way that doesn't feel like just quiet. Ridge view at the top takes in 3 ranges on a clear day. People drive 3-4 hours for that view. And I get it because I've been up there and it does something to you. Busy weekends, I'll move 40-50 permits, people coming up from the city with the matching gear and the trekking poles. And they come back 4 hours later, looking like something got put back in them that they didn't know was missing. Good people, most of them, excited. I like the excited ones. Most of them have a great time. Now this mountain has a history, and you'll hear about it if you haven't already. People go up and don't come back, and that's been true longer than I've been here. Longer than the guy before me. The backside especially, it's got a reputation around town, the kind nobody talks about directly, but everyone knows. County calls them lost hikers. Papers run it when they run it. People shake their heads, say, what a shame, then drive up here the next weekend because the front trail is beautiful and the backside is somebody else's problem. That's the story this mountain has, and it's the reason nobody asks too many questions when I call the deputy. There's a trail cam monitor mounted under the counter here. Covers the parking lot and the first 50 yards of trail. Second camera about 2 miles up. Mounted on a post the ranger station put in before it closed. I can see both from the register without moving. Bench out front is where people sit when they come back. Boots off, packs down, and I watch them from here. So this notebook here next to the cash box, not the permit log, a different one. 3rd volume. Says so right there on the cover because I ran out of room twice. First 2 are in a box in the back room, next to the ones the guy before me kept. His are sparser, but it's the same stuff. You're looking at me like I'm about to tell you this place is haunted or something. I'm not. I don't know what this is, but I've been writing it down for a long time and it fills 3 notebooks, and you need to hear what's in them before I hand you the keys. This binder, this one's yours. Same thing, cleaner. I made it so you wouldn't have to read my handwriting at 2 in the morning. But I'm going to walk through it out loud anyway because some of it doesn't make sense without the stories behind it. I stopped counting permits a long time ago. A few thousand a year, all those years. Most of those people came back. Inside cover of the binder, I wrote a note. Not a rule, just a habit. Check the trail cam every morning before you open up. If there are shapes at the tree line that weren't there the day before, too still, not the right shape, you sell fewer permits that day. I don't have a story for that one. I've just never had a bad day when the tree line was clean. Now, rule 1. It's the first page in your binder. Nothing red goes up the trail. Doesn't matter if it's a jacket or a backpack or their hair. You get it off them before they go up. This comes before everything else tonight. That bin by the door, the one I told you to keep stocked, that's what it's for. Dark colored shirts and pullovers. Nothing costs more than a few dollars. And when someone comes in wearing red, I've got a line about sun exposure on the ridge and I point them at the bin. Most people swap. The ones who don't, I push harder. And under the counter here, next to the register, there's a bottle of cheap temporary hair dye. I've used it twice, both times on women with bright red hair who laughed at me but did it. I pay for those shirts myself, by the way, $4 each. 23 years of running a nonprofit out of a clearance bin, and I don't even put it on the sign. Tuesday, quiet day, maybe 3 other permits all morning. A woman came in, solo, and she was wearing this bright red athletic top. bright enough to spot from across a parking lot. I gave her the line, pointed at the bin. She was polite about it, but no thanks. The shirt was new. She liked it. And I pushed, not my usual nudge. I really pushed, because the mountain had been off that week. More shapes at the tree line than usual, and something in the air felt wrong. But pushing just made her want out of the shop faster. She bought a water and trail mix, signed the permit, and she was gone. I watched her go up on the trail cam, red moving through green. I could track her longer than I could track most people, which is the whole point and the whole problem with that color. She wasn't back by closing. Went out, 0 returns. Her car was in the lot next morning and the morning after that. I wrote her name in the log and called the deputy. He came out, took a report, filed it the way he files all of them. Good guy, the deputy. We've got this arrangement where he takes the report and I nod, and we both know it's going in a drawer, but he comes out every time I call, and I respect that. A couple weeks later, I was closing up after dark, wiping down the counter, and the door chime went off. I looked up and she was standing in the shop. Same red top, same face, and she was the right height and the right build and everything about her matched, except she'd been in my log since that Tuesday. She walked to the cooler and picked up a water bottle and a bag of trail mix, same brands she bought the day she went up, and brought them to the counter. Set exact change down without me saying the price. And she was smiling. The right smile. Same one from when she came in that first time, but it didn't move. Same expression from the cooler to the counter to the door. And I don't know how to say this, like a photograph. A photograph of a smile just on a face. I bagged the water and the trail mix and said have a good night. She left. Nothing on the trail cam. No footage of her coming or going, even though the chime went off. So I restocked the shelf, wrote the visit in the notebook, the date, and what she bought. Checked the register total. That's what I do after. I don't know what else to do, so I do that. I can see her face. Yeah, I sat in that chair about 23 years ago and made the same face, so I get it. But there are 63 names in that log, and she was one of the early ones. Keep listening, because that's one rule, and I'm on page 3. Northwest Fork. If somebody asks about it, you tell them it's closed for restoration. It's not closed, and there's no restoration. But that's the line, and you don't change it. Once the sun goes down, the mountain sounds different, and if you hear something out there that sounds like a person, you stay inside. Don't go to the window, don't go to the porch. Stay inside. I'll explain why in a second. Rule 2. You hear a voice from the trail, a voice calling your name, someone you recognize. You keep walking. Don't answer, don't look, especially if it sounds like someone you've lost. The mountain has voices in it. I don't know how else to put it. People it's already taken, it has their voices. And the people who come up here carrying grief, they're the ones who hear them. That's what I've seen. Hearing it won't kill you. Following it is what kills you. Every hiker who heard something from the trees and stayed on the trail came back fine. It needs you to leave the path. That's the rule, and that's the line between coming back and not. Gene, he was a local, one of the few. Came to the shop every week for years. Coffee from the pot I keep behind the refrigerator. Bag of trail mix from the second aisle. Same order every time. Same day. He'd hike up, come back by afternoon, sit on the bench for a while, and wave on his way out. Big hands, always sunburned across the knuckles. Left-handed, which I only know because he signed the permit book backwards from everyone else, and I'd have to turn it around after. His wife passed about 8 months before. Cancer, not the mountain. She died in a hospital in town, but she loved this trail. She and Gene hiked it together every weekend for years, and after she died, Gene kept coming. Same trail, same routine, just kept going without her. About a month before that last Saturday, he mentioned it, said he'd been hearing her voice up there, off to the left of the main path. Said it the same way he said everything, like he was telling me about the weather. I told him the rule. He listened, and then he said he knew it wasn't her. He knew that, but it sounded exactly like her. And when it happened, he just stopped walking for a while. And then he said he always got back on the trail. I didn't know what to say to that. I sold him the permit. Gene followed every rule I gave him. Stayed on the path, never wore red, always back before dark. He did everything right. One Saturday morning, he didn't come back by closing. I pulled the trail cam footage and watched it. Gene hiked up like he always did, steady pace, main trail, nothing unusual. At about the 2-mile mark, he stopped. Just stood there on the trail for almost a minute. Then his head turned toward the trees on the left, and he stepped off the trail and walked into the forest. Not running, walking, like he was crossing a room to meet somebody. I played it back 3 times. There was nothing on the camera. No shape in the trees, no movement on the trail. Well, He heard her calling and he went. What else was he going to do? He used to knock on the counter twice on his way out every time, like it was the door he was closing behind him. I don't know why I'm telling you that. About 10 days after dark, Jean walked in. Coffee and trail mix, had the money on the counter before I could ring it up. I said, "See you next week, Jean," because that's what I always say. It looked at me, and the eyes were flat in a way Jean's eyes had never been flat. Jean had warm eyes, the kind that creased up when he was giving you a hard time about something, and whatever was standing at my counter had none of that. It picked up the coffee and the trail mix and walked out. Look, this is the hardest rule to enforce. You can't stop someone from hearing something. You can warn them, that's it. And some people, the ones carrying enough weight, they're going to hear a voice they love and they're going to follow it, and there's nothing you can do from behind this counter. I knew Jean. Knew his order, knew his routine, knew his wife was dead, and I still couldn't save him. I'm sitting here trying to tell you what it's like, and I can hear myself, and I know how it sounds, but you'll stand behind this counter one night, and one of them will walk in, and then you won't need me to find the right words. Some of these names are strangers, some aren't. You're sitting different than you were 10 minutes ago. Good, that means you're listening. Anyway, rule 3, when the birds stop, close the shop. Don't sell permits until they come back. Everything else tonight has been about what people do wrong. Rule 3 is different. It's the mountain. When it's just sitting there, the rules work. The trail is safe enough, and people come back with a sunburn and good photos. But a few times a season, it shifts, and when it does, everything alive on that mountain knows. Birds go first, then the insects, then all of it. Every ambient sound just gone. Like someone pulled the plug on the whole valley. It was mid-afternoon, sunny day, 5 permits out, all on the main trail. I was behind the counter, slow afternoon, and everything outside just stopped. Cooler motor still running, fluorescence still buzzing, but beyond the door, there was nothing. I walked out to the porch, and the air had weight to it. Sky was clear, but the pressure was wrong, thick. Then something, I don't know what to call it, lower than sound. A vibration in my chest, and the walls and the floor under my feet. Something very large and very deep, paying attention to the base of the mountain. Not coming down, just aware. I went inside and locked the door and stood behind the counter for 2 hours watching the trail cam. All 5 came back, one by one, over the afternoon. I watched them come down on the monitor and cross the parking lot to their cars, and I didn't get up. Next morning, a couple came in for water and I asked how the hike was. "Fine, great views," the woman said. She mentioned that it got quiet up there for a while, really quiet, and then the birds came back and everything was normal again. She smiled about it like she was telling me about the weather. They had no idea what they'd walked through. I could see the trailhead from the porch that morning, same as always, same mountain. The silence happens a few times a season, and this season has been more than the last 2 combined. Birds are the signal. When they go quiet, you close the door and don't sell permits until you hear them again. Red I can fix with the bin, and I can warn people about the voices. The silence is the mountain doing what it wants, and all you can do is wait it out. So before I get to that, one more thing. If a hiker comes back and their pack is heavier than when they went up, don't ask what's in it. Sell them whatever they want and let them go. 3 times in 23 years, and all 3 came down fine. Nothing wrong with them I could see. Never asked, not interested. Rule 4. If someone is in the shop and the door chime didn't go off, don't say anything about it. Ring them up. Let them finish. Let them leave. You've heard 2 visits now, the woman and Jean. But I've had about a dozen over the years, and there's a pattern. And you need it, so you recognize one when it's happening to you. The chime goes off sometimes and sometimes it doesn't. When it doesn't and someone's in the shop, you know what you're looking at. Timing is always after dark, never during hours, and never when someone else is in the shop. And the eyes, they hold contact about half a second too long, and then they break all at once. Not adrift, just on and off, like a switch. I noticed it with Jean first, and I've seen it every time since. I checked the cam, habit. The movement is the same way, right, but there's nothing in between. No fidgeting, no shifting weight. It moved when it needed to, and that was it. The clothes are always the same outfit from the day they went up. 3 times I recognized the items from my own shelf. I sold one of them that hat. Off the rack by the register. She tried on 2 and picked the blue one, and I remember because she asked if it'd keep the sun off her neck. A couple months later, she's standing at my counter in that same hat, and I'm bagging her a water bottle. Anyway, the purchase is always the same thing the real person bought on their last visit. Exact change every time without me saying the price. You're writing this down, which is good. I put it in the binder too, but hearing it is different from reading it. During a visit, I'm on autopilot. Ring them up, bag the item, say have a good night. The shaking doesn't start until after. When the door closes and I'm standing here looking at a gap on the shelf where the water bottle was. A visit takes 3 minutes, maybe 5, and every one of them feels like 30. Afterward, I check the trail cam, and sometimes there's footage and sometimes there isn't. I write it in the notebook and I put the shelf back together. Then I go upstairs. I live up there, above the shop. You probably saw the stairs in the back, which means at 2 in the morning, after one of those visits, I'm lying about 15 feet above the counter where it just stood. That's it until the next one. I've never tested what happens if you interrupt it. If you refuse to sell, or say their name wrong, or tell them you know what they are. My gut says don't. The rule is, let it finish. The permits, the rules, the watching, the silence, you can learn to live with that, not the visits. 23 years, and I still can't tell you what it's like to bag a water bottle for a woman who's been dead for 6 months and say have a good night. You just do it, and then you restock the shelf, and you write it down, and you go upstairs. Rule 5. If someone doesn't come back by closing, write their name in the log, the date, what they were wearing, what trail they took, and then you close the notebook. You do not go up after them. Do not go up. I mean it. If someone wants to organize a search, and they will, you tell them to stay on the marked trail, stay short of the 3rd mile, and do not push too far in. The mountain doesn't care if you're a hiker or a rescue team. What matters is how far in you go. Guy went missing on a solo hike. His buddy went looking the next morning, went off trail, pushed deep. 2 names in the log instead of 1. Worst one was a young man who went up alone. His father and uncle drove up 2 days later and stood in this shop, and I told him what I'm telling you. Stay on the trail. Don't go past the 3rd mile. The father looked at me the way you'd look at someone who told you to stop breathing. His son was up there. They bought water and they left. I watched them on the trail cam, watched them past the 1 mile mark, the 2 mile mark, and then the father stepped off the trail and the uncle followed him into the trees. That was the last time the camera saw either of them. The father visited about a month later, stood at the register, set down the right amount for a water bottle without me saying the price. The uncle never visited. I don't know why some do and some don't. 3 names in the log from 1 disappearance and a whole family gone. You look like you want to say something. Not yet. Then there was the search and the rescue team. 4 of them, proper gear, GPS, radios, training. 2 stayed on the marked trail and searched the standard grid and came back by afternoon with nothing. The other 2 went off trail to check a drainage further in. They kept going and they didn't come back. I never learned their names. I know one of them had boots that cost more than my register and the other had a wedding ring. And I know the 2 who came back sat on the bench out front and didn't say a word for 20 minutes. The log exists so you have somewhere to put the names. Write the name, close the notebook. Someone is going to stand in the shop and beg you to go find their son or their husband or their friend. They're going to look at you the way that father looked at me, and you're going to want to help them, and you can't. Everyone who goes up after someone is another name in the book. I closed the shop once, 1 week, went to see my sister in Wheeling. I hired a kid from town to run the register while I was gone. Good kid, just didn't know what he didn't know, and I didn't leave him the notebook or the binder or any of it. I came back and there were 2 cars in the parking lot that hadn't moved in 5 days. 2 permits sold, 0 returns. Haven't taken a day off since. I didn't come up here on purpose, by the way. I came up here because my marriage ended and I needed somewhere that wasn't where I was. Found a shop, mountain behind it, and figured it was as good a place as any to be quiet for a while. That was 23 years ago. That's the binder, 5 rules and the stories behind them, but there's one more thing, and it isn't in there. I'm going to pour myself some of this. Give me a second. Weekday afternoon, slow day. I was restocking the cooler when a father and his son walked in. I sized them up the way I size up everyone who comes through that door. You'll do it too. Give it a month. The father was wound tight, jaw set, and not looking at the kid. That energy where a man's filling up a room with whatever's going on between them. The son was maybe 15, 16, trailing behind, hands in his pockets, wearing a red windbreaker. You already know what that means. I had the line ready. I always have it ready. But this father, I've been reading rooms from this register a long time, and this man was not someone you pushed. If I said something about the jacket, there was going to be a scene, and the kid would just grip tighter. So I made a call. Didn't point at the bin, didn't give the line. Sold them 2 permits, 2 waters, and a Gatorade for the kid. The father paid without looking at me, and they left. I watched them cross the parking lot on the monitor. The father walking fast, the kid 3 steps behind in that red windbreaker. They went up and I watched until the trees covered the red. Then I started restocking whatever was nearest because I needed my hands on something. I checked the monitor, restocked something else, checked it again. The afternoon went by and closing got closer and the screen kept showing me an empty path. One figure came down, moving fast, alone. The father walked into the shop and stood at the counter and didn't say anything. He was wearing the kid's windbreaker, the red jacket on the father's frame, too small across the shoulders, sleeves not reaching his wrists. No pack. He asked if he could use the phone, and I said yeah. He made one call. Then he went out to the bench and sat there until the deputy came. I don't know what he said on the phone, and I didn't ask. About 3 weeks later, I was closing up for the night and looked up from the register, and there was a teenager in a red windbreaker standing at the cooler. The chime hadn't gone off. He was reaching for a Gatorade, the brand the father bought him that day. Reached right for it, grabbed the bottle, arm back. Direct to the one item like nothing else in the cooler existed. He walked to the counter and set it down and put the right change next to it without me saying a word. I bagged the Gatorade and said have a good night, and the face looking back at me. I've stood through a lot of visits, but a teenager's face should not be that empty. No attitude, no boredom, nothing behind it at all. It left. Nothing on the can. I stood there for a while after. The gap on the shelf where the Gatorade had been, the register, the door he walked out of. Then I wrote it in the notebook the way I always do. The red rule works. You've seen it. The woman in the red top didn't swap and she's in the log. Jean, red had nothing to do with it. The voice got him. But this kid, if I'd pushed the jacket, if I'd given the father the line and pointed at the bin, that windbreaker comes off and the kid walks back down. Every other name in that log, I can tell you what went wrong, and it wasn't me. They wore red and wouldn't change, or they followed a voice off the path, or they went too deep. 62 names, and every single one has a reason that isn't my fault. This one is. I had the rule, and I read the room, and I chose not to use it, and there's a kid in that notebook because of a call I made in about 3 seconds. Don't. I'm not telling you this so you can tell me it's not my fault. I checked the camp. Parking lot, dark trailhead, nothing moving. My knees were stiff. I don't know how long I've been standing in one spot. This season's been different. I've been doing this long enough to know what normal looks like up here, and the numbers are off. More silent days in the last few months than in the 2 years before that put together. Visits have picked up too. The patterns in the notebook are holding, but the weight behind them has shifted. And I can feel it even if I can't document it, which is, look, I'm a guy who writes everything down. When I can't write it down, that tells me something. This season, I went up, past the 2-mile mark, past where Jean stopped, further than I'd been in years. I won't tell you what day because I don't remember, and that should bother you because it bothers me. I can tell you the exact change that woman said on my counter 6 years ago, but I cannot tell you when I decided to walk up there. The trees change. I don't mean the species, I mean the way they stand. The canopy closes in and the sound drops out, and it isn't the silence I told you about, the one where the birds stop. It's quieter than that. It's the kind of quiet where you can hear your own blood. I kept going. The air got heavier the higher I went, and at some point I stopped on the path and just stood there. And what I felt, I'm going to do a bad job of explaining this because I don't think there are words for it. Something big and old. I keep trying to find the right word for what it was doing, and the closest I can get is nothing. It wasn't watching me. I don't think it knew I was there, and I don't think it would matter if it did. Just there, the way the rock under the mountain is there. 23 years I've been writing this stuff down, and up there it felt like scratching in the dirt. I didn't see it. Nobody sees it. But I felt the edges of it, and the edges were enough. I walked back down, opened the shop the next morning and sold permits and checked the cam and did everything I always do, but I knew I was done. Not because I'm afraid. I went up there and I came back. I'm done because the job is bigger than one person, and it always has been. The guy before me, his name was Huck. I mentioned his notebooks earlier. He ran this place 15 years before I got here, kept his own records, sparser than mine, but the same patterns going all the way back. And before Huck, there are county records, missing persons reports, going back decades before either of us. This has been happening longer than anyone's been writing it down. I stayed 23 years because I thought one person with a notebook and a clearance bin was enough. It's not. It was never enough. And the 63 names in that log are the proof. But staying here until I break doesn't help anyone. Training you while I still can is the last useful thing I can do. Huck's notebooks are in the back room, in a box with the old permit logs. You should read them. Not because they've got anything mine don't cover, But because there are going to be nights behind that register when you need proof, you're not losing your mind. Huck's proof. So am I, sitting here. I don't know if you'll still be here in 6 months. I wouldn't blame you if you weren't. Here, this is yours now. It's lighter than it looks. Everything you need for the first year is in there. And after that, you'll start your own notebook because you'll see things I haven't covered. That's how it works. Huck worked some of it out before me. I got further. You'll see things we both missed. The cooler needs a new seal on the left door, by the way. I keep meaning to fix it, and I never do. You'll hear a rattle when the compressor kicks on. I'm going to check the cam one more time, then I'll get out of your way. Parking lot's empty, trailhead's dark, nothing at the tree line. Same as most nights.